Hey guys, what's up? This is Meathead Mikkel from meatheadgaming.com, and today I want to make a video kind of following up on the last three that I made about, toughness and that sort of thing. I wanted to kind of showcase the power of stacking multiple types of damage mitigation, and when you combine that with like a lower vitality based build and high passive regeneration, you can actually have a character that's basically immune to damage, and it's very, very possible with proper gearing, and I'm going to show you guys that today. So, before I get started, the first thing I want to mention is this is kind of a work in progress. I'm not going to touch this build again until Reaper of Souls because it's only like 3 days away, and all the gear that I have right now is going to need to be, some of it's going to be re-rolled, a lot of it I'm just going to have to find new gear, and it's not very well rolled. But I haven't really been playing Barbarians, so it's like there's no point in me to try and find better gear right now for this, but it does work. And so for that reason, you guys are going to see some, very low, um, DPS number with a very high toughness number. I know some of you are going to complain about, you can't kill anything. It's not the point, all right? That can be changed with, redoing slots a little bit. Anyway, so I'm going to link the previous videos in the video description below, where I talk about where to put your Paragon points first, how to properly stack toughness, not vitality based, and also, where I actually explain like how toughness works. So basically what I'm going to be doing with this barb is I want to mitigate enough damage to a point where my passive life regeneration per second actually covers the remaining damage that I don't mitigate. And that's really easy to do on like a lower difficulty, but when you get into torment like 4, 5, 6, it becomes a problem. You need to really get your stats up to make it happen. So first of all, let me talk about my build a little bit, and then I'll show you my gear and explain kind of like this combination that I'm using. Primary skill, cleave, reaping, swing. You can do whatever you want here. This is all going to depend on kind of like how you want to deal damage, but this could be whatever. Rend, I'm not going to be even using it in this video. You can put whatever skill you want here, just whatever you enjoy. Revenge, Bloodlaw, it lets you heal 4% of your maximum life for each enemy hit. This I'm not going to be using until I hit Torment 6. And even then, like very rarely. Maybe with a really, really bad elite combination or like a couple elites on Torment 5 at my level of gear, I might need this, but otherwise I'm not. I just chose Sprint just so I can get around faster, but this doesn't matter, this doesn't matter. Warcry Impunity, now this is where it gets interesting. So in terms of stacking toughness, there are actually several runes here that would all be viable, and it all depends on how much like all resist you have or how much armor you have, that sort of thing. Because and you would just have to test and see which one gives you more. Like if Hardened Wrath, which gives you 40% armor bonus instead of the 20 and 20 on Impunity, if this gives you more toughness than Impunity, then use this. Invigorate is an interesting one. Like if you get to a point, because of the passive regeneration, which is critical to this build, but you're giving up 20% all resist. So these two are actually very, very close to each other, and you're going to have to find the sweet spot based on your current mitigation to actually make this happen. For me, at this point, Impunity is a little bit better. Veteran's Warning, the dodge chance, this, I wouldn't really go for this because it will actually, in a lot of cases, give you a higher toughness value than either Hardened Wrath or Impunity, but it's misleading because it's RNG based. And this build does not rely on RNG at all. This build relies on just straight damage mitigation. It's very consistent, and I'll show you guys why. So typically it's going to be Impunity, in some cases Hardened Wrath, and depending on how much resist you have, you might actually want to go for Invigorate instead. For passives, and again, once you get to a certain level of gear, you're not going to need to go all defensive, but I'm going to explain when I'm using this. So I'm getting an extra 25 armor buff from Tough as Nails. You could either do Tough as Nails or Nerves of Steel. Because I'm using a lower vitality build, Tough as Nails gives me more armor. But you could do either one of these. You just have to pick one and see which one gives you more toughness and use that. Here I'm using, at first I started using Tough as Nails and Nerves of Steel, but I switched to Superstition because just this damage reduction from elites, basically, because with this build that I'm going to show you guys, the only thing you're going to die from is ground effects from elites. That's it. That's literally the only thing that will kill you. Nothing else in the game will kill you but stacked ground effects from elites, and this is the best mitigation against that. And it's also going to give you a little bit more fury from ranged attacks if you actually need it. Now this is the critical one though. These two you can kind of change a little bit, but this is critical to this build. So when you drop below 35% life, you're going to be able to spam your damage spells, but more importantly, it's going to reduce your damage by 50%. And what this is going to do is it's basically going to make your passive life regeneration a lot more efficient. So, in the higher tournaments, as I'll show you guys soon, your life is going to drop way down. Like, you're going to get way, way down to like maybe down here. And you're going to hit a sweet spot where, relentless procs and your life regeneration actually like starts to mitigate, the remaining damage that you take. So this is absolutely critical to this build. So anyway, that's the build. Now let me show you the gear, because this does rely on certain pieces of gear. So, I have 4.8 million toughness, but that doesn't actually tell you the entire story. So let me go through these piece by piece. Just a rare roll, strength, vitality, all resist, very good mitigation, good mitigation here. The life regen per second is something that you're going to want on a build like this, and you're going to want to stack it. Because again, once relentless procs, it's going to help you fill up a lot more, or a lot quicker. Armor, I just want 3 sockets, all resist, all diamonds. And you can make this build a lot more effective by just using, higher level diamonds. I haven't found any. I didn't buy any off the auction house before it closed because I really just don't care about this until ROS comes out, and I'm actually going to make this build and make it have a practical application. But you can do diamonds here, pants, same thing, just craft up some pants without too many crafts with a couple sockets, all resist, that sort of thing. Boots, I would probably reroll this. I would probably reroll the movement speed out of this into strength, and then just get my movement speed through Paragon points, because that's more efficient per point, something I talked about in a previous video. Weapon, you can make this anything. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm using this one that I rolled because it gives me a decent chunk of vitality, but it also gives me a ton of strength, and that directly translates into armor, which is going to directly translate into non-vitality toughness, which is going to make my life regeneration per second a lot more effective. Gloves, using sages, strength, crit chance. I could actually just do something that even gives me more toughness and more damage, like these that I rolled. I got crit chance and damage and strength and armor in here, but for this build in particular, I actually want the life regeneration. And again, in a practical application, you're actually going to go with these, not the ones that I have equipped. But we're not here, for a practical application. At this point, we're here to theorycraft and show you guys what you can actually achieve with this. So bracers, just some high toughness bracers, vitality, all resist, life percentage. This would actually be a lot better if this was strength instead of vitality, or strength instead of life percentage, or even armor. But strength would give you more armor, so you'd want strength. It'd be better than life percentage, because again, you're not trying to stack vitality. Like, if I was going vitality, I'd have way more than 120,000. Now, let's get to the pieces that really matter. So, I found a storm shield. This is where it starts to get really interesting. 29% damage reduction from melee attacks, plus the 9% damage reduction from elites, some life percentage, all resist, high block chance, and of course the armor from the shield itself. Now, this combined with like the 30% inherent damage reduction for a barb, combined with other sources of damage mitigation, they're not additive at all. They're multiplicative, so it's not like you can't get 100% immunity if you stack melee damage reduction, but it's very significant. It's huge. I found a string of ears, and again, if I played with this some more, I would reroll that electrocute damage because it dropped on my wizard. I would reroll this to strength, but this is another 29% damage reduction from melee, and I'm actually going to show that to you guys. So 49.59, if I take this off, it's going to reduce it down to 29. So this 29% only actually gives me about like 20% instead of 29 because it is multiplicative. And then I have an Eye of Etlic. Again, here I would reroll the holy damage and the resource cost reduction. And I would hope to find one with like maybe crit chance on it, and then just reroll one other property to crit damage or primary stat or something like that. But this gives me 30% range damage reduction. So if we look at everything, I don't even know how I have this crazy crowd control reduction, but it's kind of irrelevant to this build. But 30% reduction from ranged attacks, 49% from melee, and just a little bit from elites. You could actually make this work really well if you had the full Blackthorn set, which I don't, because you get a lot of damage reduction from elites, but also it makes you immune to certain effects like Plague, Molten, Desecrator. I think that's it. But anyway, so this is the percentage damage reduction. I also have this Justice Lantern with an additional 13% block. So when you add that with Storm Shield, I'm now at a 45% block chance. And as you can see, it only goes up to 75%. But the interesting thing about block, and I touched on this in the previous video, is that if you have enough passive mitigation through all resist and armor, then all but like the heaviest of attacks, like the wind-up attacks from like the Act 1 Berserkers or like the Act 3 Golgors, all but the super, super heavy attacks, every time you block one of those like quote-unquote normal attacks, you're going to take 0 damage, because this damage reduction that you get from a block is after mitigation. So if you were to take less than 2849 to 3706 damage, then it's going to block all of it, and you're going to take nothing. So this is huge for mitigation. And as it stands, or as it is, Barbs are going to get an ROS, a nice little passive for blocking. So it's going to make sword and board builds a lot more prevalent, I feel. And the last piece, this is the other one that's absolutely critical to this build, is Rogar's Huge Stun. And the legendary proc on this is what's going to make this build shine. And of course I would reroll the area damage or the resource cost to something that would give me more damage. But anyway, increases your life per second by up to 87% based on your missing life. So basically the more your hit points drop, the more your life per second increases. So actually, the lower you get on health, the harder it becomes, the higher your toughness per second becomes, and the harder it is to take away more hit points. And the interesting thing is when you combine this with damage mitigation, stacking, and relentless, once you get to that sweet spot where you're right below 35% health, you're taking 50% less damage, and your life per second is really, really high. And so you end up basically taking no damage or very, very little. So anyway, guys, that's kind of the setup. And again, if I wanted to do this with more damage, which I will revisit this build in ROS when I get around to playing a Barb seriously. But for now, I just want to showcase this and kind of get your guys' head spinning about ways that you can build a super, super tough character, and then later on I'll make follow-up videos on how you can actually make and do like very, very nice damage as well. So having said that, let's just go through all the torments. We're at Torment 1 right now, and we'll see how much damage we take. And I'm just going to hunt down an elite, and I'll finish off this with showing you guys Diablo on Torment 6. I don't really want to show them to you on the other Torment difficulties, because Diablo and a lot of bosses are actually easier in terms of damage output than elites if you just stand there. So in Torment 1, is honestly it's pretty silly. There's very little damage output, and as soon as I find an elite, I'll show you guys that you take like actually hardly any damage at all. My health bar is probably not going to move whatsoever on Torment 1, and we're just going to go through them one by one. And really, this is just kind of an exercise in how much toughness you have. So here we go. Here's an elite. So what we got here? Arcane Enchanted. Alright, so we got Pools and Arcane and Desecrator. So this is actually like pretty significant damage. This is about as bad as it gets in terms of elemental effects. And this is Tournament 1, so, you know, it's not really anything significant. But I'm standing on an Arcane Beam right now, taking fireballs. My health isn't even budging. Like, I'm doing literally nothing, guys. My health is not budging whatsoever. And you see these slight fluctuations, and the other thing you'll see is you'll see this fluctuate a little bit. And I'll show it to you more later, but that's the stone kicking into action. It's actually increasing my life per second as soon as it drops a little bit. So this is actually completely pointless. Like I can stand here all day until the game boosts me for being AFK. Anyway, that's that. So Tournament 1, nothing to it. Let's go ahead and jump into Tournament 2. Because I know you guys are going to say, well, you know, try this on Tournament 5, try this on Tournament 6. Bet you can't do it. Well, I bet you I can. But let's take it one step at a time. So, Tournament 2. Let's see where we're at. And we're really not going to start taking any real damage until, with this much toughness anyway, and this amount of regeneration until like Torment 5-ish, maybe on 4. And actually, while we're at it, guys, I did forget to mention something, and that's my Paragon Point distribution. So utility, this doesn't really matter for the purposes of this build, because I'm actually just going to be standing in damage and doing nothing. But you know, life on hit is going to be pretty important to this build. Area damage is going to be important as well. For core, I just got movement speed, and I actually pumped strength instead of vitality, because again, you know, as I mentioned in previous videos, you want to stack your toughness not through vitality as much as possible, because it makes your sustain, you know, your life per hit, life per second, that sort of thing, a lot more efficient, and you know, then you're going to become more tough overall. So I'd rather have 380 armor than 380 vitality. It actually is a lot better. Offense doesn't really matter for this build. Defense, now here, you know, in this case, here everything matters. Like, because this is kind of a defensive build, all these matter. All resist will be first. You know, I explained several times why all resist is, in almost all cases, going to give you more toughness than any of the other stats, and more of the right kind of toughness. But I actually did all resist, and then I did life regen per second, and now I'm going into armor. You know, ideally I would do all 3 of these and then go into life percentage. But you are going to want the passive life regen for a build like this. And in Reaper of Souls, this value is going to be higher, and it's going to be a lot more valuable. So, that said, let's we're in Torment 2. So let's see. Let's find us an elite on T2 and see if I take any damage. Highly unlikely. But let's check this out. And again, guys, you know, you can, like, if I wanted to spend some time, you know, making this so that he'll do a lot more damage, like, it's very possible. I just don't want to, with ROS coming out, I don't want to spend all my resources, you know, crafting up items that are, like, perfect for this build, where you get your damage stats, but you also get mitigation and life per second. Like, that's just not important at this point, but I will most certainly, when I do play a Barb in ROS, I will be making a video about something, a similar build like this, you know, with 70 gear that can handle the torments in ROS. So anyway, we're seeing a little bit of damage here. I think part of it's like the arcane and the poison, but you know, even so, it dips down a little bit and then it comes right back up. So this is, like, Relentless is going to proc somewhere down here. This is not going to go anywhere. It'll drop for a couple seconds and it'll come right back up. So absolutely pointless. Anyway, that's Torment 2. Let's move on to Torment 3. And we'll see where we're at. Pretty fun, right? Now, the other thing is, though, you know, that you have to, like, again, this is kind of a proof of concept. And, you know, nobody's actually going to be doing this. No one is going to get into a game and just stand there in ground effects against elites for like a minute straight without doing anything. Like, there's no reason for that. So this is kind of like overkill on toughness. You know, more realistically, you might get frozen if you don't have like the new ice climbers or enough, you know, reduction, and really you just want to kind of get a level of toughness that's enough to kind of last you through your play style. And you know, if you're playing like a barb, so that it can let you take a few seconds of damage without dying. And builds like this, they're really high toughness based for hardcore, and I don't play hardcore because you know, I don't want to subject myself to character loss because the servers went down. I'm not that masochistic. But for like hardcore, this has a lot of value because you really can't die. So anyway, so this is Torment 3, and what you guys will see is it also kind of depends on the elite affixes. You know, because we might hit one that's pretty much all like physical damage. Like you get something like Waller, Vortex, Reflect Damage, Shielding on Torment 6, and my health bar's not even going to budge. But then you might get something with like Arcane, Frozen Pulse, Poison Enchanted, Molten. You know, you could get that unlucky. And then that's, you know, that'll probably cure. That's just too much to stand in. But even here, guys, like, this has Arcane, it's got the Frozen, and I'm still pretty much topped off. So, there you go. I mean, this is Torment 3, taking some ground effects, nothing big. Let's see what happens if I actually stand on Arcane Beam, if I can actually get to one. So if I stand in one, nah, I can't even stand in one. So, well, see, it kind of went down a little bit there, but it's going to come right back up. So, Torment 3, at this level of toughness, we're starting to see some damage after, what, like a minute now, but it's coming right back up. So, Relentless isn't even going to proc. So that's Torment 3. Now, let's go ahead and, you know, keep going. We'll go to 4. See where we're at there. And, you know, the other application for builds like this is not even necessarily like I want to be super tanky and do a bunch of damage, but I guarantee you guys that in ROS, there's going to be something, like some kind of run, just, I don't know if chest runs are going to be back, but there's going to be something where you're just going to need to get from like one spot to another, and it's going to be a long travel distance. And you need to do it to make something happen efficiently, like whether that's loot or XP or just boss runs or whatever. And you're going to need a character that's able to traverse that distance 100% safety. You know, and a build like this would work. Or if, you know, or if tanking, like legitimate tanking, where, you know, you kind of spec this to taunt enemies. You know, if there's a build like that in ROS, then yeah, this build is going to be huge because you're just, you know, you're going to be taking all the damage, but you're not really taking hardly any damage. So anyway, let's get us an elite. Let's see if we can find one here. And some of you, now there are probably some of you guys with your thinking hats on right now saying, well, why don't you try this in Act 4? And, you know, this build is not 100% immune to all kinds of damage. Like mathematically, like, yes, you could die with this. It's possible, you know. And like in Act 3, you have the Succubi, which I think reduce your armor by like 50%. In Act 4, Silver Spire, you can get a debuff which reduces your resistance by 50% for a little bit. And when something like that happens, Nightmarish Vampire. Anyway, when something like that happens, you know, you could die because your toughness just tanks. So we're actually taking on 4 elites, or 2 elites now. So Nightmarish, Vampiric Desecrator Teleporter, and another Poison Enchanted Molten. So here, 2 elites, yeah, I'm going to be taking some damage. A single elite, not really. But let's go back here. And this is actually good. So this is actually a really bad combination. You know, this is what I wanted to point out. Like Torment 4, but you're taking on 2 elites, both of which have a ton of elemental damage, and you're still tanking it like a champ without actually doing anything. So will this die eventually? Yes, but it's going to take a while. And what I want to show you guys is exactly how high like this life per second gets. So Up here, I'm at like, if I keep spamming my revenge, I'll be at around like 5k. But then watch what happens when it gets really low. This life per second, because of this stone, is going to jump to like, I don't know, 7,000, 8,000, maybe. Maybe, if I get low. Maybe I won't get low. Come on. Well, I'll have to show this, guys. I'll have to show this to you guys on a higher 20 difficulty. Anyway, really bad combination. You know, multiple elites. Like, yes, you could die, but you know, this whole time I'm standing here taking a bunch of different effects to the face, and I'm still not dead. So let's move on to Torment 5, because this would actually very rarely happen. And it would happen even more rarely for you to just stand there for a minute and not do anything about it. So, long story short, this works. Let's try Torment 5. And if you wanted to, you could really like stack just ridiculous amounts of, you know, toughness to make this even more effective. Like, you could specifically gear for this. I haven't, but I did find, you know, the String of Ears, the Eye of Etlik, the Rogar's Huge Stone, and the Storm Shield, all of which, you know, synergize very well together. So this is Torment 5. Let's find an elite. And see what kind of damage I take from a single elite. So even though that was Torment 4 and I was taking a decent amount of damage, that was an absolute worst case scenario. Alright, so here we go. We have Molten, extra health. Well, all it is Molten, but they do a lot of elemental damage, so you know, that's where Superstition kicks in. But anyway, you guys can see that my health actually drops. Like, I'm going to pop Revenge a little bit. Show you guys how quickly it actually drops until Relentless procs. And it's going to start dropping slower and slower and slower because I'm getting more health regen per second. But somewhere around here, I'm going to hit a sweet spot. So right around here, you're like, yeah, I guess I probably would die. But see that sweet spot right there? Like, it's pretty much not dying. And all I have to do is hit, you know, Revenge once. And so once you get down to here, like, it's gonna start going so slow, just so slow, that, you know, you literally have to go AFK. And I could pop a single Revenge and be back up to full health. I could spam this pretty much indefinitely because of how many mobs I have on me and pretty much never bottom out. And, you know, with enough damage, like, you could do some serious damage with this. I mean, this is 220% weapon damage, no resource cost. You know, you can combine this with Rend. You can just spam this and Rend all day and basically, like, never stay topped off almost entirely. And this is without any kind of lifesteal, taking a bunch of ground effects from elites. So there you go. This is kind of like taking us back to the original Inferno days, where you had to spec very, very defensively in order to be able to survive Act 3 Inferno, you know, before it got nerfed. For those of you guys who remember that, you know, way before Monster Power was introduced. So anyway, that's Torment 5. So let's finish this out. Let's go to Torment 6 and see where we're at. So in a more practical setting, you know, if you were going for like a sword and board build like this, you would probably use Revenge. Just because, like, even if you use Relentless or not, you know, you might not even have to use Relentless. But this skill is just, it's monstrous. And you wouldn't even have to use the 4% necessarily. I mean, 2% will still top you out pretty well. You could use any of these other ones. You know, like 480 weapon damage. Are you kidding me? Like, this is huge damage, and you'll be able to spam it nonstop. This is like a mini AoE Hammer of the Ancients right here. That doesn't cost you any resources if you go for kind of a defensive build like this. So now that's something we're going to explore further, but you know, not today. I just want to show you guys like exactly how crazy powerful something like this can be. And this will 100% work in ROS, and I'm going to show it to you guys once I, you know, play the Barb a little bit and gear up and have, you know, the right gear to actually do this. But you know, like the combination of Rogar's Huge Stone, especially if you stack life per second on all your other items, the combination of that and the Relentless passive is, like, it's silly. It's absolutely silly. And by the way, guys, if you want to see what, like, white mobs do, this is Torment 6, how much damage white mobs do. Well, no, they're actually doing okay. Those winged Molochs, they actually do quite a bit of damage. But I should hit a sweet spot again here pretty soon. And maybe I would need just a little bit more toughness to make this work. But see, I'm kind of staying around the 30k mark. So, like, with my level of toughness, you know, even if they get a couple lucky hits in, when I'm at around 7,600 life per second, 30,000 HP is like the sweet spot, because Relentless is procced and my life per second is out healing all the damage that they're doing, and then I literally just have to hit Revenge once, and I'm topped off. So pop it twice, and I'm done. And I actually can't even get out of here now, so I'm gonna have to find a way to try and get out of here. There we go. Let's find an elite. Let's find this an elite. But, I mean, that much elemental damage is pretty much equivalent to what a single elite would do. But let's go ahead and find it anyway. Hopefully there's one around here. So, again, you know, if you were making some kind of runner build that needed to get from point A to point B, and it doesn't have to be a barb, but, you know, you could kind of take some of these toughness stacking concepts and, you know, even if you did a gear swap, like, you don't have to even play with a specific build or anything. You could just, alright, so here's two of these. This is going to get tough because there's two of them. But anyway, you could make a build like this where you could just run and be okay. So look at how much this is taking on 2 elites of Torment 6 with elemental damage, and I probably will die eventually. Like, it is getting a little low, but not that low. You know, I'm still. This is kind of like my sweet spot here is around 20k. If you can see. So it would really take, like, that's a little low. And that was the poison effect, it got me a little low. So, yes, you can die, but I bet you with a little bit more toughness, like if these were higher level gens, and I got, you know, some life regen or re-rolled slightly higher life regen on a couple items, I could even do this. And it's something I'm going to show you guys, you know, for anyone who doesn't believe me, even after seeing something like this. You know, I will make this work to a point where you can pretty much negate all this damage. So, anyway, guys, we're going to finish out. And I'm going to show you what this looks like on Diablo in Torment 6, and that'll be that, but it's not going to be as exciting. And I might actually die on this one. Yeah, I'm going to die. It took a while, so not completely immune, but lasted for, you know, a good 10 seconds just standing there against 2 elites. So, very, very, very effective. And I just want to make this last part real quick. You know, for those of you who've played the game enough, you know Diablo doesn't actually do that much damage. Elites are a lot more dangerous, but since he is currently the last boss until ROS, it just kind of makes sense to just showcase, like, well, you know, how does this work against Diablo? Well, it works a lot better than elites. It's actually kind of silly. But once again, this can only work properly if you have a lot of toughness that's not vitality based. Because, and even with skills that, like, this is another comment that I've been getting on some of the videos, even with skills that regenerate like a percentage of your life, you know, like Revenge, it gives you 2 or 4%, you know, life every time you hit them. So people think, okay, well, if I get more hit points, more vitality, well, it's gonna, you know, regenerate more life each time, and, you know, so therefore I should stack vitality. And by the way, guys, I'm not doing anything. I see, look, come on, no hands. But that's not true, because, you know, if you have a bunch of vitality but like low armor, low all resist, then you're gonna lose all that life super quick. Like, if you had, you know, if there's a monster that hits you for 2 damage, and, or let's say you had like 2 hit points and 0 mitigation, a monster hit you for 2 damage, you would take 2 damage. Now let's say, and, you know, you had a skill that also regenerated like 100% of your life, and you use that skill, you would regenerate 2 damage. Alright, so you'd be back at 2. Let's say you had a skill, like let's say you had 50% damage reduction and a skill that only regenerated like 50% of your life, or you only had half the hit points, but you had 50% reduction and that monster still hits you for 2, then you would only take 1 damage, and then that skill would regenerate 1 damage, so you'd be at the same spot. So it's actually more efficient in terms of healing to stack armor, stack all resist, stack some of these other mitigation stats like block chance, block amount. Crusader's going to be real big on block amount, armor, and the interaction of these 3 right here. So that's definitely going to be something to consider. But anyway, there it is, guys. Diablo doesn't even, he's just kind of poking me right now. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. This is Meathead Mikkel from meatheadgaming.com. Thumbs up if you like it. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you guys soon.